Well, I mean, it is for the best of the podcast that we are branded as like the faces of the podcast. Like, I think it's important. We can't just do like, here's a picture of, of Julius Randle like spinning into a double team. Like, that's not gonna be best for like
Yeah.
hot hand theory. Like,
Yeah.
but I hear you. It sucks. Um,
Sick Julius Byrne too. Gotta take out the shovel when you can. Jesus.
it came naturally. I didn't intend to.
Dude,
I was just
Kendra's
like,
gonna
what's an
get
iconic like Knicks image?
Kendra's gonna get you.
Yeah, if this was the intro to the pod, Kendra would be.
Can be. It still can be. We can
in
score
the
those
DMs.
points,
This is Hot Hand Theory. This is a podcast where we talk about the NBA and break things down from an analytical perspective. I'm your co-host XJ. He is my brilliant co-host Geoff. Geoff, we have a lot of Knicks to talk about. We have a lot of NBA to talk about. But first, we have some business to attend to. In our last podcast, we dropped a little breadcrumb in there towards the end there. It was a kind of a marathon episode that we broke into two parts, and just kind of getting a feel for who was riding with us the whole time and hanging on to every word of this eye test and impact metric talk and all of these kinds of things, these kinds of concepts that we were dropping. We dropped a little breadcrumb and said, if anybody wanted to let us know that they were still with us at that stage in the podcast, they can drop us a message either on YouTube in the comments, on social media, and either of our direct messages. The word spreadsheet. And I was happy to see that we actually got a fair number of comments from people who were listening and who wanted to engage. And we also promised something to at least one of those people who had dropped that word. Do you want to talk about what we promised them?
Sure. We promised them $10 American, I believe. 10. Yeah.
All 10
and
of them.
I mean, just to be clear, we appreciate all of you. So just because that we will only be giving away $10 doesn't mean $10 worth of our hearts aren't also being given away to all of you. So, thank you to everyone who listened to the end and who sent us messages. I want to shout out a specific individual. His Twitter name is NGSG Dude. I know him as J. And he sent me just about the nicest message I've ever gotten from anybody on here. It was overwhelming to read. It was super nice. He did say spreadsheet at the end. So Jay, if you had ulterior motives, then no. I know you didn't, because what you said was just wow. It's why we do stuff like this, honestly. I'm doing this off cuff, and so I'm very overwhelmed by what he said, and so just thank you, and thank you to everyone who listened, and I'll send it back to you extra.
Yeah, obviously, thank you so much to everyone who listened to the end. But even if you listen for a couple minutes, or to one of the clips that we have on Twitter, or to one of the shorter YouTube clips as segments that we have on YouTube, like, we really appreciate it. The person who is going to win $10, in addition to $10 worth of each of our hearts, is going to be Lucas Kim Ball 38, who dropped a really nice comment on YouTube and also called himself a fellow spreadsheet watcher, because everyone knows that Geoff and I do not watch basketball. We simply watch spreadsheets. That is what we observe, and that is the foundation of all our basketball opinions. They come from viewing spreadsheets. Do you want to add anything to that, Geoff?
I ranted enough last week. I was about to rant again. I need to reel it in, or we're gonna have another 3-part episode. So yeah, I'll just go look at my spreadsheets while you're.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Lucas Kim Ball 38. Thanks so much for your comment. We'll be in touch with getting you your winnings. But thank you all again to everyone who sent us a message in really kind words, like Geoff said. And yeah, it's been really overwhelming and amazing. We need to jump into Knicks talk. Let us jump into Knicks talk. The Knicks went 3-1 this past week, including the Timberwolves game that just happened. For those of you who are watching this, that just happened last night. The Knicks defeated Atlanta in a tough one, 116-114, coasted to relatively easy victories against both the Wizards and the Hornets. The last night, the Knicks got dominated in the second half against Minnesota and ended up losing the game 117-100. Geoff, I will let you do the honors and start talking about anything that you want to pull from those 4 games or last night's game, which was the freshest in our mind.
Yeah, so just real quick, I think the Knicks continuing their trend of not just beating, but dominating teams they're supposed to beat is extremely encouraging. Even if you don't believe in the overall ceiling of this team, you're a Knicks fan for a reason. And even if you don't think they go win a championship, you'd like to see them in the playoffs. You'd like to see them, win a playoff series, win 2 playoff series, whatever. And teams that do things like that, teams that have, high floors and 50, the types of ceilings we talked about before the season, they take care of business against teams they're supposed to. And the Knicks pretty much have done that all season long. Their only really bad loss is at Cleveland, or excuse me, to Cleveland at home, when Cleveland beat them in New York without Garland or Allen, I believe. I think it was
both were out. Yeah, Garland,
both Garland and Allen were out. Besides that, they've beaten everybody I think they're supposed to beat. They've lost to a lot of teams that are supposed to be really good. They lost the Bucks. They lost the Celtics twice. Now they've lost the Timberwolves. Yeah, so I don't really have much from a film or an X's and O perspective to say about the Hornets or Wizards game. They won both handily, and I came away feeling how XJ felt about what he said would happen, before the game. He was just basically like, yeah, I expect them to win handily. And they did, because the Knicks are a good team and every player in the rotation is good. So it's just really hard for a team that they're better than they really have to do something like the Celtics did against the Hornets tonight, or what the Knicks did against the Timberwolves tonight, and just shoot terribly from 3 to let a team like the Hornets or the Wizards beat them. So that made me really happy. I don't know if you have anything to add about those 2 games.
Yeah, not much on those 2 games. I think what's interesting is that in the NBA so far this season, at least it seems to me, that there are like some bottom barrel teams that are just really bad. And then there are a lot of like decent to very good teams. And then there's like a small elite tier that a team like Boston is in. Obviously, they lost to one of those bottom barrel teams in Charlotte. But I think, just to comment on that really quickly, we were chatting right before we started recording the pod and just talking about some 3-point variance, and the fact that Boston relies on a lot of 3-point shooting is going to leave them subject to lose random games against random teams at any given night when they shoot particularly badly from 3, because 3-point shooting is subject to pretty high variance, and any night you can just shoot 5 of 40 or whatever the case may be, and you're going to lose that game. I don't think the fact that Boston lost against Charlotte is any indication on how good they are, or are they a fraud or any of that stuff. Like, I think Boston is in the elite tier and a handful of teams that are that good in the NBA. But the rest of the teams I think are mostly like anywhere from good to very good. My only concern about the Knicks, and like you said, I mean, mostly talking about the Washington and Charlotte games, I think it's a great sign, like you said, that they beat these teams that they're supposed to beat and kind of beat up on them and piled up on them. I think that's awesome. But I am a little bit concerned, and I've been very excited about this Knicks team. I'm a little bit concerned because I want to see them actually handle a good team. Because to me, this shows me that they have a really high floor. The fact that they're beating all of these bad teams, the San Antonios, the Charlottes, I was going to say the Clevelands without Allen and Garland, but they lost one of those games. Even the Clippers, who have been bad since they acquired James Harden, I don't think they're going to stay this bad, but those teams that have not been good, the Knicks have beat up on those teams. And I just want to see them also beat a good team, which hasn't happened yet. So you
don't think 2 road wins against Atlanta, like those are pretty encouraging wins to me, I would say.
Sure. I just think Atlanta is just one of those like good teams. I don't think Atlanta is like a really good team or a contender or anything like that. I mean, when I'm talking about beating a good team or a really good team, I mean beating a Boston, beating a Milwaukee, beating a Minnesota. And it just feels like, I mean, the Milwaukee game was close at points, but it just feels like, and the Boston game was close, first game of the season, but um, it just feels like there's a gap between the Knicks and those teams, and obviously we have a long way to go. A lot of kind of variance and fluctuations that we're seeing in some of the Knicks' performances, I think, have to kind of calm down and sustain a little better. A lot of guys aren't playing to their level. A few guys are playing to like above what we thought was their level. So we'll see things balance out, and then we'll really get a sense of where the team is. I've been excited about this team as like a potential, I'm going to say this on the podcast, an Eastern Conference Finals contender. But, I will have to see where things are when they balance out a little bit and we see some of this kind of variance kind of come down and just see what they really are. So I'm just looking for like that marquee win at some point coming up soon where they beat like a really good team. And kind of show that they're in that level, and they have opportunities for that coming up over their next two games, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, do you have any thoughts on that? You just feel like they've done what they're supposed to do. They've lost games that they were supposed to lose. They are who we think they are. Is that kind of where you're at with it?
I guess I just think you're being a little bit too pessimistic because yes, they're only 8-6, but I think if you, based on how they're scheduled, I mean, first of all, they just came off 5 road games in 8 nights. That shouldn't go underrated. That's preposterous. That's a punishing schedule. They've already had a number of back-to-backs. They've already had 4 back-to-backs, which is like, what is that? Or 3, excuse me, 3 back-to-backs. No, 4, I was right. Yeah, 4 back-to-backs. But if you go through their schedule and you just say, like, objectively, or look at the betting odds before the game, are they supposed to win this game or are they not supposed to win this game? They've been underdogs more times than they've been favored. So, I mean, I know you're not an emotion. I know what you're basing your opinion on isn't based on emotion. I just feel like you're being a little bit too hard on them because I think that looked at purely objectively, their record should be worse. They were underdogs in the Clippers game. They were underdogs in the first Cleveland game, despite the injuries. They were underdogs in both Boston games. They were underdogs in at least one of the Atlanta games, but maybe even both. And they were underdogs again tonight against Minnesota. So yeah, I just think that they've basically they've looked better than anyone, including the people who set the lines, expected them to, which is a good thing. And the other kind of pushback I have about what you said is I don't really associate the Knicks with volatility. And I'm surprised you kept using that word because I think that, yes, the Knicks shoot a lot of threes, but they're not, an outlier level 3-point shooting team. They're not the Rockets from 2018. They're shooting a lot of threes. They're shooting a lot of good threes. Like Tibbs isn't going to let you, unless you a certain somebody, he's not going to let you shoot, bad threes. They create good threes from good spots, and they have a lot. The only people who are shooting threes are good shooters, especially since RJ is shooting almost. I think he's over 50% after tonight. So yeah, I don't really associate the Knicks with volatility because of their offensive rebounding, because of their low turnovers. I think they're just a pretty stagnant output team. So I was surprised you kept using that word.
Yeah. So just to respond to those two things. So I think the Knicks are better than the betting markets think they are. So I'm measuring them against my standard, not against where the lines are. Because I think that I like I just mentioned, I think that they have the potential to be an Eastern Conference Finals team. And so I'm measuring them against that standard. So when you think about it from that perspective, obviously it makes those things a little different. I think that they should beat Atlanta. I think that they should beat Cleveland 2 games in a row when, they don't have 2 of their 4 best players. I don't think they should have been underdogs in Cleveland. In fact, for our Knicks film school betting and sweating, I think I picked the Knicks to cover or to win straight up against Cleveland, that game that they were underdogs, because I thought that was a weird line. It didn't really make sense to me. If the Knicks, and I think we talked about it before that game, it was like the Knicks had to win both of those games to me, in my opinion. Like I just to show the echelon that they're actually in. So I wouldn't judge it by the betting lines, because the betting lines think the Knicks are like a 45 win team or something and I think we both don't think that they are. I think we both think they're like a 50 plus win team. So that's what I mean. And yeah, you want to respond to that?
I do think I want to stick with the volatility thing for a little bit longer. I do think they have a couple of volatile players.
Yeah. I didn't get to mention about the volatility part. When I was talking about the variance stuff, I meant with regard to player performance, like individual player performance. What I meant by that is I think there's some noise with regard to the way that they're achieving their outcomes. So for instance, they're achieving their outcomes on the back of RJ Barrett overperformance, Josh Hart underperformance, Quentin Grimes underperformance, Julius Randle obviously underperformance, Mitchell Robinson overperformance. So that's what I mean. I mean, like a few of their guys are playing above where I think they're going to end up at the end of the season, and a few of their guys, maybe a lot of their guys, are playing below where I think they're going to end up by the end of the season. And really, like in a nutshell, it's almost summarized by Jalen Brunson's performance, which has been from three, like prime Steph Curry level in terms of how many catch and shoot threes he's taking, how many pull up threes he's taking, and the fact that he's shooting like 48% on both of them. That's absurd, and is 100% not possible to like maintain over the course of a season. But also his 2-point shooting has been far below par, far below his standard as far as like his effectiveness from 2-point range. He's been terrible at finishing at the basket and really low for his standard as far as mid-range shooting. So I just, that's what I meant by kind of the variance. I mean, like the players are not playing at the level that I think that a lot of them are not playing at the level that I think they will, like moving forward in the season. Guys who are playing like at the rate that I think is like sustainable is probably like, DiVincenzo. This is probably like around what you can expect from him. Maybe he'll do a little better, and maybe like Hartenstein. But the rest of them are like, Randall's
not Mitch.
I don't think Mitch can do this all season, but yeah, I'm going to be a holdout there. I know most Knicks fans are like, yeah, Mitch is just getting better. This is Mitch. This is like, I don't think Mitch is, one of the greatest, offensive rebounders and rebounders of all time. Like, I mean, he could very well be at the end of his career. I just like, I'm going to not assume that he's not going to like have a 21% offensive rebounding rate like throughout the course of I just can't imagine that happening. Like maybe it will. I hope it does. That would be amazing, but that's just never going to be something I assume will happen.
Yeah, I feel like where you and I disagree is I think I'm more interested in the why and not in the what, because so you mentioned Josh Hart. Yes, Josh Hart is performing worse than he did as a Knick last season, but
worse than he ever has in his career, to be clear, in terms of like his performance. Not just that as a Knick last season, he was like an all-star level player. Just as in terms of relative to Josh Hart from, his Lakers rookie season to now, this is the worst he's ever played in his entire career.
Okay, so we can expect him to get better, but why is he struggling? Well, for starters, he's not shooting the ball, which continues to be, from a Knicks fan perspective, infuriating. But even just as a basketball fan, he got one look tonight above the break, and he was wide open, and he stood there like he didn't have any interest in shooting it. I don't know why he just doesn't seem to have any confidence from beyond the arc, especially after he shot 52% as a Knick from three last season. You think that would build confidence. And I know he's shooting more per 36 this season, I believe. He's shooting more per 36 this season than he did last season, but he's still shooting way fewer per 36 than basically he ever has in his career. That's disappointing. He hasn't been as malleable defensively. Like when he was at his best last season during the regular season, you felt him and you felt him all over the court. He was at the point of attack. He was playing off the ball. He's not really doing either of those things well this season. Pretty much the only thing that I can point to with Josh Hart that he's doing well right now is he's still a force rebounding. You still notice him when he's attacking the glass and when he's, skying for those rebounds. So yes, I expect Josh Hart to play better. I expect more of his shots to go in, but I'm not sure we can count on him evolving from a mentality perspective in the way that a lot of people assumed that he would once, shots started falling and his role was more consistent, especially with a coach like Thibodeau who loves him. He wants Josh Hart. Like if I was in his corner, if I was his agent, I would sit him down and be like, Josh, this coach is dying to play you 35 minutes a game. He wants that more than anything in the world. All you got to do is show him that you deserve it, and for whatever reason, he's very passive. And I can't say I understand why.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think for me, like Josh Hart has been clearly the worst rotation player on the Knicks, and I just, despite what you were suggesting, which is all accurate, of course, like, his 3-point attempt volume is down relative to the rest of his career, aside from last year, which is, shockingly the year when he shot 52% from three with the Knicks, which was only like 25 or 26 games. He only was taking 3.4 3-point attempts per 100 possessions, which is extremely low volume. That's extremely low volume. Like that's, if you're taking 3.4 3-point attempts per 100 possessions, you're essentially not like a 3-point threat, no matter what you shoot from three. In my opinion, it's just like extremely low volume. So, I do expect him to get better, regardless of the reason why. Just like I think players essentially regress to the mean of what they are. Josh Hart being a 28-year-old, kind of like fully developed NBA product, I think he's going to just like inevitably revert to like the player that he is, which I think is not the player that he was when he came over to New York, but the player that he has been, for the past like 3 years of his career. So I don't know what the reasons are. It could be anything. It could have to do with a hangover from FIBA, like there could be a number of things. It could be like stuff in his personal life. He obviously he has new children, relatively new children. So who knows what it is? But regardless of what it is, I just believe he's going to get better. And it's harder for me to kind of like speculate as far as like what might be the cause of that. Oh, does that mean that he's going, like, I don't know what the cause is, but I just know he's going to get better. And I don't know how that really works, but I just know it ends up averaging out for the most part. Unless you think like this is going, like his career is going downhill from this point.
No, but don't you think that it's a good thing that the Knicks who are quote unquote overachieving are the younger Knicks, and the Knicks who are underachieving are the guys whose output is a little bit more defined and who are so positive regression seems much more likely than negative regression from, like, sure, we don't know that Mitchell Robinson is the greatest offensive rebounder of all time, but he was supposed to be better than last season. He's 25 years old. Sure, we know that RJ Barrett isn't going to shoot 50% from three the rest of the season, but EPM doesn't just love him because he's making threes, he's doing other things well. Before he started really slumping tonight, he had another really, really great defensive start to this game off the ball. And that was just, he was excellent off the ball, both playing free safety, stunting on drives. And, RJ doesn't need to shoot 50% from three to be really good. As we talked about last week, it's helpful. But my point is he's, 23 years old, he's supposed to get better. So maybe, if you're saying, well, he can't be this good because he hasn't been in the past, well, maybe he is this good. I think that's more likely than Julius Randle is shooting. His true shooting percentage is 47%. I think Julius Randle is far more likely to improve than RJ is, or at least even if RJ and Randle are both equally likely in your mind to regress to their true output, which it seems like it's close to 100% for you, which is fine. My guess is that Randall's positive regression will be more meaningful than RJ's negative regression, and where they are age-wise has something to do with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think that's primarily why I'm still encouraged. Like, I'm not jumping off the ECF bandwagon. All I'm saying is that I'm getting a little antsy, and I want to see them beat a good team, and I think they have two opportunities to do that. I mean, a really good team when I say that, not just like Atlanta. But yeah, no, I think that's a great point, and I agree. I think
count Miami. You would count Miami without Hero, just to be clear.
I would I count Miami in that? I think I have to, but
because I feel like Miami and Atlanta are pretty. I feel like home versus Miami without Hero, and 2 games at Atlanta, a fully healthy Atlanta with Jalen Johnson God moding.
Jalen Johnson is absolutely God moding.
Listen, buddy. I'm going to talk about Jalen Johnson every podcast, and you can do your thing where you talk about the defense of some random player every podcast. All right, and that can be our bit. Pat Connaughton and Shake Milton. Can't wait to hear.
I got a couple more in my back pocket when we talk about the Suns, but
stay tuned, guys. We're gonna hear about Grayson Allen's sneaky defense.
Grayson Allen's not terrible. Yeah, I don't think the only reason I would count Miami, I wouldn't count Miami based on their output. I would count Miami based on like their history and Spoelstra and like how they play. But in terms of just like Miami as a team, I don't think they're not overwhelmingly impressive. Like they don't have a vaunted offense. Like, to be honest, they look like they looked last year, like in the regular season.
Don't fall into this trap, dude. We all did it before the Miami series. Oh, they're an 8 seed and they're not that impressive, and they're just gonna come in and drive every single Knicks fan nuts.
That is not to say that they won't do what they did in the playoffs last year, right? Like, I'm just saying, as far as regular season Miami, like they've looked similar. They've obviously, have a solid record, but I don't know, like they don't seem scary to me. Like they don't seem like a real contender or anything like that. Like I'm not going to count out Butler and Spoelstra and those guys. Like I believe that there is something that they bring to the table that allows them to perform at a higher level in these playoff environments. So I am on board for that. But as far as like regular season Miami, I don't think they're particularly like scary. I wouldn't say they're like a really good team. I would say they fit right into like kind of that grouping that I said, that middle group of like good teams. Atlanta fits in there, Miami fits in there, and the Knicks fit in there right now. So I think we'll see I would like to see, because I believe the Knicks are a little bit above those other teams, and I want to see it demonstrated through a strong win against a better team. And I think this, no matter what we've seen from Phoenix as far as their like win-loss record or anything like that, Phoenix is in that category to me. Especially whenever, Booker and Durant are both playing. So Phoenix would be the opportunity to kind of be a team that is in their upper echelon and show that the Knicks are not just a good team that's going to beat up on bad teams. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Plus, as you know, Julius Randle takes that star showdown with Kevin Durant very seriously. So that's... Yeah,
he views them as peers. That's why he views them as
correct.
As
this is,
it's like, yeah, me and you, KD, we go back and forth, huh?
Oh God. Julius Randle is what makes me aware that I am a biased person and I cannot trust what I'm watching, and I need to rewatch it over and over again, because he is the most maddening player that I've ever rooted for in my entire life. And like, I root for him every single night, every single time we play. I'm just like, come on, Julius, let's do this. And then, halfway through the first quarter, I'm just like, oh, again, like we're just going, it's this, I need to make one of those somebody needs to make a picture, the circle of Julius Randle fandom, because it's always the same. It's like, all right, well, we'll see you next game, and it's but then you look at the scoreboard or the box score and it's like, okay, he had 24 and 11, and like, I didn't think he was good again tonight, but there's got to be something, he had 21 and 14. I was being dyslexic there. 21 and 14 on 16 shots. Like, is that how can that be really bad? But I came away from that game without following the box score being like, God, there were just so many things where I just didn't think he was helping, and I thought he was actively hurting, especially on defense. But maybe I'm just watching closer. Maybe those mishaps are more prevalent amongst all the players, and I don't know. I need to do what Thibodeau says and watch a third time, apparently, because I don't know. I mean, Tibbs keeps sending him out there, and Tibbs is a great elite basketball mind. And, tonight's game, he benched RJ, he benched Quickley, he benched Hart, and he closed with Mitch, Randall, Brunson, Grimes, and DiVincenzo. And I don't know. I didn't think Randall deserved to be out there any more than RJ did. I know RJ didn't shoot well, but I thought RJ was one of the few people who was actually creating good looks against an elite defense by collapsing the defense. He had I know he had a number of shots that were just like, whoa. He had, a UFO or two from the baseline. But I thought that would have been a fine game, even against the double big lineup, to try, RJ. And I know that's a little small maybe for Tibbs' taste, but Randall, when are we going to learn, or when are people going to learn that Randall isn't helping you on the defensive glass as much as his rebounding numbers may indicate? This implication that, Tibbs doesn't like going small, he needs Randall's size. He's not down there helping you defensively. He's not boxing out. He's not taking out Karl Anthony Towns. He's just standing there waiting for somebody else to box him out so he can grab the rebound. How many more years of film do you need before you realize that? There was one today where he let Towns blow right past him and just stood there and watched. And then he was like, okay, I'll just stand here in case and then Gobert just flew past him as well. And Gobert got the offensive putback, and that was 2 points. And he is so much closer to JJ Hickson than he is to an actual good rebounder.
JJ Hickson, elite reference.
I don't mean like overall impact. I mean as a rebounder. I know what you
obviously.
Mean. Yeah. Dude, that guy was. I remember one season the Cavs were like something insane, like 5 to 10% worse with him on the court, and he led the team in rebounds. He averaged like 13 rebounds a game, and they were getting killed on the court when he was on the court because it was either he grabbed the rebound or the other team grabbed the rebound. He just wasn't helping you at all. This is why you come and listen to Hot Hand Theory, folks, for JJ Hickson references.
Absolutely. That's why I listen to it. That's why I'm here. That's what I'm here for.
I just don't think that the size excuse, it doesn't carry any water with me, because I know his rebounding isn't close to as impactful as people imply it is. So when you're just looking at the nuts and bolts of the game, I think you have to weigh more than, well, Julius needs to be out there than because of his size. And tonight was a great example of a night when I just didn't think he was helping the Knicks. And then this gets back to my original point. I looked at the box score and it's like, and then you look at Tibbs continuing to throw him out there, and it's okay, maybe he is, and maybe I'm biased. I have to be open to that idea. I have to be, because I don't know. I'm just definitely not self-assured enough to be like, I know better than Tom Thibodeau from watching on my TV once.
I mean, I will say this. I want to talk about the rebounding thing, because this is like one of my biggest pet peeves, like when it comes to basketball. So you hit on a sensitive subject for me, but I do want to say that I do think I'm seeing Randall get better in terms of his overall kind of approach and his overall impact on the game. And I think it's not happening in a linear way. It's not like he was terrible at the beginning and now he's like just slowly getting better and better. But I think it is going a little bit up and down, but in a positive direction. So he is as infuriating to me as he is to you, in terms of when his process is bad, when his effort is low. I do think he's working his way towards getting back to, I won't say back to what he was last year, because I don't think he'll be what he was last year. We had talked about a few pods ago, Immanuel Quickley, whether he would, as far as like how the impact metrics rate him, whether was last year like the highest that impact metrics will have graded him, which I think is unequivocally no, not the case. With Julius Randle, I think that last year's will be his best season as far as like rating on an impact metric scale. I don't think he'll ever make it to that point again. And so my expectations for him are a little bit lower. Like I think he's been getting better. I think he's been okay on defense, like with a lot of really bad mess ups as we're always come to expect from Julius. But I think he's on a good trajectory is what I'll say. So while I also feel a lot of your frustration, I'm like, he's moving in the right direction, and I think he's going to get there, within the next 10 or 15 games. I think he'll, on balance, be a much better player. As far as the rebounding thing, I'm not sure why people like rebounding as far as a box score statistic is like the most meaningless in of itself thing that like is tracked. Like I think points are more meaningful, assists are more meaningful, steals are more meaningful, blocks are more meaningful. Rebounds don't mean anything as like a box score statistic. And I've gotten to disagreements a lot about this with regard to Obi Toppin, former Nick Obi Toppin, who is a very low rebounding power forward. And people, I keep saying that it's like jarring or it's really bad that Obi Toppin gets like 2 rebounds in a game or something. And you can't have a power forward getting 2 rebounds because that means you're getting killed on the boards or something like that. Like that just does not follow. Like that's just not like deductively that doesn't follow, because all that matters is that your team is rebounding the ball. It doesn't matter who gets it. It doesn't matter how your team gets it. It matters that your team gets it. So now if Obi Toppin is, playing on the perimeter, closing out to a 3-point shooter, puts his hand up, diving at that 3-point shooter, and then lets his momentum carry him down the court and leaks out for a fast break, people are assuming that means that Obi Toppin is causing the opponents to be able to get more offensive rebounds. That is not borne out by the numbers. When Obi Toppin's on the court, both with Indiana and with New York, the opponents do not have a much better defensive rebounding or offensive rebounding numbers. If you look at that, if you study it, right, like you will not see that correlation. That doesn't mean it's causal. It doesn't mean that like Obi Toppin is the reason why the team's rebounding better. It could be that he's on the court with really good rebounders, which he was with Mitch. And I'm not going to say he is in Indiana. I don't think they have many really good rebounders. But my point is just that just because you are not grabbing the rebound yourself and you are not getting that check mark, that tally mark in the box score that says you got the rebound, that doesn't tell you anything about your impact on rebounding, on team rebounding. You have to dive deeper into more statistics. You have to watch the games. You have to see what's actually happening. So this whole box score, like Julius has 10 rebounds, Obi Toppin had 2 rebounds. Like it's just so irrelevant to me. This is just something that bothers me so much. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but
it's just funny that you bring up Obi. I mean, just the quick example is Roy Hibbert. Remember how much shit Roy Hibbert got for being a bad rebounder? And it was like, oh, he's 7'2" and he's got that wide frame. He's averaging 5 rebounds a game. Newsflash, he was averaging 5 rebounds a game because he was clearing out 3 bodies and his teammate was getting the rebound.
Yeah.
To reinforce what you were just saying about Obi, small sample size, but the Pacers are getting 73% of defensive rebounds when he plays, 66.5% of defensive rebounds when he sits this year. Now, again, that could be noise. Maybe the bench unit that Obi doesn't play with is just a really bad rebounding team. Maybe Miles Turner is the real, maybe he's the real, what the hell's the word? Lightning rod. There's a better word, but maybe he's the real catalyst. There we go. Maybe he's the real rebounding catalyst. Could be. But the point is that whatever you think of Obi's rebounding, it's clearly not hurting you because when he plays, you're getting more rebounds. That is what matters more than who's actually grabbing the rebounds. Russell Westbrook's 11 rebounds were entirely replaceable. I don't know how many times I need to say that to anybody's listening. Would he get some crazy rebounds that only Russell Westbrook could get because he has one of the highest motors in the history of the sport, and he would just go flying in for an offensive rebound and save a game for you? Absolutely. That is what makes Russell Westbrook special. The 8 defensive rebounds a game he got because Steven Adams boxed out and just didn't catch the ball because they were hunting triple doubles that's not what made him special. And so this goes along with XJ's point that rebounds, the stat, are almost like saves in baseball. The only reason we care about them is because somebody decided 60 years ago that we should care about them. But we would be probably better off if that same person decided we should care about, I don't know, like box outs that lead to rebounds or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that obviously that's the big example of inconsequential rebounding is Russell Westbrook, coming up and picking up the scraps after Steven Adams does all the dirty work and boxing out 2 or 3 guys. It would be almost like saying Steven Adams averaged, whatever it was in some of those Westbrook years, 6 or 7 rebounds a game, and be like, he's an okay rebounder. Like Steven Adams is an all-time great rebounder, and that does not need to be. You can't measure that by like the number of tallies in the box score. So that's a big nuisance to me. But as far as
Shay,
yeah, what's up?
Every week we come on here and we chat and we're buddies and we talk about how we need to keep this shorter, and then we have a 20-minute tangent about rebounding, and it's like this is never getting shorter ever. We're gonna start cutting into this into three pieces before we know it.
Yeah,
like
this is never getting shorter.
You heard JJ Hickson and we're like, this is me. I'm in. And I guess that's why we do this.
That's why we do it. And I think at some point I will get out of denial and acknowledge that this is never getting shorter. Until then, every week I go into it with the express goal of that this is going to be, an hour and 15 tidy podcast, but probably never getting shorter more realistically. I think that's a solid kind of recap and discussion about the Knicks. I mean, I think
we should talk about the Timberwolves game real quick.
Okay, yeah, let's dive into it.
We were talking before we hopped on, and I'm very interested to hear your perspective because I was a little bit surprised. So, people who aren't privy, and actually you could have been privy to what we were talking about before this actually started, but XJ forgot to hit record. But that's another story. But for everyone who wasn't privy to what we were talking about, I basically just hopped on and was like, schedule loss. That's my takeaway from this Timberwolves game. I thought we shot like total shit. I thought the Timberwolves played an unreal defensive game. They were flying around. I was super impressed with the Knicks effort. I was sitting there, Knicks are down 20. You got Quickley and RJ just killing themselves for these rebounds, just racing up and down the court. Everybody, and I'm not just singling them out. Everybody's effort was top tier tonight. I didn't love Randall's, but whatever. Like Randall's is, again, I can acknowledge that maybe I'm just looking for, for whatever reason. It's not like I don't like him personally. I don't want anybody to think that. I love the Knicks' overall effort. The Knicks didn't make anything. Quickley himself had 5 shots go in and out. I didn't get what was happening there. That was kind of wild. I think when we talk about our second segment later, I'm going to talk more about this game with Quickley and how it highlighted something to me, so I'll save that. But my point is that I thought the Knicks played fine, and they were just tired at the end of a road trip. They had tired legs. They were playing a really good team who plays really well at home. And are the Timberwolves maybe better than we thought? Sure. But I would rather take that away from this game than, the Knicks, again, can't beat a good team. This was a really, really brutal schedule. This was the end of it. That's my takeaway. And you didn't really seem to be on board with that. So, or at least fully on board with that. So I'm very curious to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. So just to clarify, I'm going to ask you a question real quick. So did you felt like this game that they lost against the Timberwolves was really came down to kind of like a make or miss league kind of situation? Like they just missed shots?
I would say no, thinking about it fully, because the Timberwolves missed a lot of open shots. In fact, I would bet that from a shot quality, when shot quality releases the score tomorrow, I would be totally not shocked at all if the score kind of is reflected, if the shot quality differential is similar or even greater in the Timberwolves' favor than the actual score. So no, not make or miss league. I didn't think that the Knicks only missed shots because they had tired legs. I just didn't think they played. I thought the only thing that I was really, really proud of was their defense in the first half on Anthony Edwards. I thought they defended him gangbusters. I thought they did a great job. It was a great game plan by Thibodeau. And then Edwards just kind of woke up, and that was that. So from an X's and O's standpoint, I was really proud of that. And then, I guess that was it. There was, I didn't think they did a great job of collapsing the defense and forcing and creating a lot of great shots. And I thought the Timberwolves created more great shots. And I think that you can point to tired legs more than they just can't beat this team.
Okay, that's fair. So I need to clarify that because I didn't think the Knicks got really good shots basically the whole game. And that was more my concern. I didn't see much of a flow to their offense. I thought they took really bad shots. And that was kind of all they could get against this team. Even shots that they made, like DiVincenzo made like a ridiculous 3 once, and I'm just like, that's crazy. And I think Brunson couldn't really get off good shots as well. RJ, I don't know. I don't know how to describe RJ's game, honestly. So I would agree with that. I think if we were to see the shot quality data, I would assume that the Knicks shot quality was very low in this game. And so if it was a situation where they just had open threes and open shots and they were just missing them, I would be more likely to agree with you. I felt like they couldn't do anything. And I don't think this defense, I think Minnesota's defense is really good. I don't think this defense is that good. So Minnesota, I mean, speaking of the fact that the Knicks, this is their 5th road game in a row, correct? For the Knicks?
Boston, Atlanta, Charlotte, Washington, Charlotte, and then Minnesota. And in 8 days. Mm-hmm. That's almost unfair. Like I'm not like conspiracy theorist I guess I kind of am, but no, I don't think that Adam Silver is out to get the Knicks. I would be very curious to see how. You know what? I'm actually for our followers. I'm going to research it and I'm going to tweet it out later. Maybe I'm just dead wrong. I'm going to check and see how many other teams in the league this season play a stretch of 5 road games in. I'll even give them an extra day in 9 or less days.
Well, I'm glad that this is okay, folks. If you're listening to Hot Hand Theory right now, I did not set this up. This is not we did not discuss this beforehand. One of the such teams is the Minnesota Timberwolves, who just played 5 road games in a row in 8 nights. This being their first one back at home. The Minnesota Timberwolves played in San Antonio against Golden State twice, both at Golden State, against Phoenix and New Orleans on the 10th, the 12th, the 14th, the 15th, back-to-back, the 18th. And then now this is their first game back at home after playing 5 consecutive road games, with those all coming in 8 nights. So that is very funny that you pulled that up. But yeah, so that's kind of where I was going. The Timberwolves are also coming off a pretty grueling schedule. So I feel like it's tough to blame it on the schedule when the Timberwolves are in almost the exact same situation, with the difference being that this is their first game back at home. And this is the Knicks' last game on the road. The Timberwolves just gave up a 120 point per 100 possession performance against the Pelicans in their last game that they won. And they also gave up, 150 points per 100 possessions game, 2 games ago against Phoenix, who obviously a much better offensive team than the Knicks. But 2 games in a row where their defense got completely dismantled. They also, again, like I said, played 5 road games in 8 nights. Very similar to the Knicks situation. So I think it's tough for me to just say, the Knicks were tired. They had 5 road games in 8 nights. They played against a great defensive team. Like, that doesn't really check out for me. So again, their shot quality was really poor, I believe. So I think for those reasons, I don't kind of just chalk this one up like I did with,
But those are conflicting. Game. You do agree that those are, you just sort of contradicted yourself immediately because you said calling it a schedule as a loss doesn't really check out for me. And also the Knicks didn't really get good shot quality. I would argue that why is it not they didn't get good shot quality because they were exhausted from that long ass road trip? Why can't there be causation there?
I mean, there could be. We just don't know that that's the case. I don't see compelling evidence to suggest to me that that's the case. Like I'm
Well, sure you do. You just watched the game.
yeah, and it didn't seem like I don't do
Well,
you
okay,
assess how do you
okay. I'm
assess
sorry. I'm
like
sorry.
tired legs by watching the game? Like
Then what
what
was
are
your
you
takeaway?
seeing
What was your takeaway then? Why do you
from
think they
watching the
didn't
game?
get? Yeah, this is why I said I'm curious.
Yeah.
What if you're saying, oh, I actually didn't see them tired. But they couldn't get good shots and they
I couldn't
couldn't.
see I honestly I can't see a team like I can't look at a game and say, oh, that's that team. I know definitively like the reason why that team is playing the way that they are is because they're tired. Like I don't know what kind of so do you feel like you could just watch a game? Like this is a genuine like question. Do you feel like you could just watch a game and then not without the context of like they played 5 road games in 8 nights or anything like that. Just watch a game fresh. Like I could just pop in a game from any time, 2014. Here's the game, and then you can just watch and say like, yeah, that team's tired. Like they're that's the reason why they're getting poor shot quality.
Okay, I just want to add some context here. Um, so first of all, the Timberwolves played. They played 5 road games in 9 nights, which not a big deal. I don't care that you got that wrong, but
you
they
did
had
say you
played.
did say 9 nights, by the way.
Oh no, I know. I'm just saying there was a small difference between Knicks and Timberwolves. It wasn't exactly apples to apples, but yes, I. But my bigger point was going to be they had played 1 game since Wednesday. So they played at Phoenix on Wednesday, had a couple nights off, had Wednesday, they probably traveled Wednesday night and then had Thursday and Friday all the way off. Then went to New Orleans, then went home. The Knicks they played Wednesday night and then Friday and then Saturday. They played 3 games in 4 days, and then the Timberwolves was their 4th game in 6 days. I just don't think that's the same. And
Okay,
I think
I don't think it's the same. I just think it's like it was just funny because you said a team that
yeah,
name a team that has played 5 road games in 8 nights, and you were like, well, even I'll even extend it to 9 nights, and then
yeah.
it was the Timberwolves.
That is wild. No, but I do think it is important that if you're so sure that I actually didn't get the sense that they were tired at all.
No. I'm
Well,
not saying I'm sure. I'm not saying I'm sure. I'm
no, I
saying
know. Okay,
okay,
I'm sorry.
okay,
I'm not putting. I didn't mean to put those words in your mouth. But
yeah, fair.
if you're saying you think that you didn't get the sense that their shot quality was poor because they were tired, I think that we should land on why weren't they able to force the collapses that they've been forcing, all season long, even against good teams. I would take that Boston game in Boston. And that's the outlier to me. Even the first game against Boston, I thought their offense was really good, especially in the first half. I thought they created a lot of good looks. Milwaukee, not a good defense, obviously, but that's a really good team. They created plenty of good looks against Milwaukee, just didn't make anything. All season long. It's not like their offense has only been really good against, or has only been good and creating good shot quality against the very bottom of the barrel. It has been good all season. So I'm asking you, if it wasn't tired legs, if it wasn't, 3 games and 5 nights and all these coming on the road and the end of a long road trip, what was the reason to you that when you were watching, that you were like, man, they're really struggling to create the good shots that they usually do?
Yeah, I think that the Knicks seem to struggle to create good shots against good defenses. And that's kind of like a reiteration of my point from earlier, which is that yes, they are a solid team and a good team. They're playing as such, and they're beating up really badly the bad teams. Like that is what they're doing consistently. And when it comes to Atlanta, like again, I think that that's a team that's a solid, like good team, not like a great team or a really good team or anything like that. So yeah, I think that to me, actually, this goes into a bucket of evidence that suggests that they aren't getting good shots against good defenses, and that's kind of the concern for me, right? They're getting amazing shots against Charlotte's, the Spurs, Charlotte's twice, the Wizards. But when they played when they played Milwaukee, you felt like they got really good shots. Their offense was like woefully underperforming in that game as far as like on an efficiency scale. They shot 45% in that game, 45 effective field goal percentage in that game. They were on a 105 per 100 possession pace in that game. The game against Cleveland at home, a 95 points per 100 possession pace in that game, shot 37% effective field goal. I can't believe I just said that. Shot 37% effective field goal percentage. And that Cleveland defense is still good without Allen and Garland. Maybe even, I won't say better, but like comparable. So yeah, my concern is really that the teams that they're scoring really well on and getting good shots and getting anything they want, those games have come against Charlotte, Washington, San Antonio. Those are the teams that they really beat up on. So that it's just more like this is not like, wow, look, they've been getting great shots against good defenses all season, and then now they just happen to not. So obviously there must be something weird that's happening. Like, no, this is consistent from what we've seen so far. This doesn't mean they can't get better. This doesn't mean that they can't start to get more better shot quality against good defenses. But this is do you feel like this is different? Like, do you feel like this is a complete aberration from what we've seen from them this season? Because to me, this seems just totally consistent.
Yeah, I just thought that they, I mean, again, this could just be my bias, but I just thought they couldn't force that collapse. And I think their whole offense is built around that. Even as it's evolved a little bit from last season, it's still, they still don't really run any plays.
Yeah. And just to be clear, the fact that they couldn't force the collapse, you believe, comes down to that they were tired.
Maybe it's more wishful thinking than actually believing it, but I do. Yeah. I think that,
okay.
I don't know. I think that, and I'll take a look real quickly. I think that the next time they play Minnesota will be a better barometer, assuming that, it's not another crazy schedule game, which I don't think it can't be this crazy. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how they play. So wow, that's so nuts.
What?
They play Minnesota again, coming off a 3-game road trip where they play. Dude, that's nuts. They play
that game doesn't count either.
No, it'll count. But yeah, that's so wild. They play December 27th, December 29th, and December 30th. So 3 road games in 4 nights, and then they fly home, and Minnesota's the 4th game. That's wild. No, you make a lot of good points. I actually think it's kind of boring to just chalk it all up to, just variance or tired legs. You do want to try to analyze more of what's happening and not just dismiss it. And I think that no player sums that up more than Immanuel Quickley, for me at least. Sums up what you're talking about, because you're talking about a divide between what you can do versus bad to average to slightly above average teams and what you can do versus the best. And I mean, neither of us are these, like the regular season doesn't matter, it's what you do in the playoffs, the Quickley hater, just the people who think like that in general. But I do think that Quickley, if you watch this game and you rewatch this game, something that very clearly stood out to me was Quickley had no assists. I know he had a couple of potential assists, and they were good passes, but all the improved passing that we've seen, all the pocket passes, all the next level kickouts, it's not even that he was passing on making those passes. They weren't available to him. The Timberwolves were basically just like, we don't respect you enough as a scorer you're not going to force that collapse. We're going to stay with you. And for Quickley to be what we know he can be offensively, what he's shown he can be offensively against, the bottom 80% of the league, his leap is going to be forcing the help in this offense. His leap is going to come in 2 areas. It's going to be being better at forcing the help so that more passes are available to him, because you need to do that at his size. It's not, you're not a wing. You're not like RJ. You're not Tatum. You're not somebody who's just naturally drawing multiple defenders because you're a bit bigger. The Timberwolves are more than welcome to let Quickley, saunter into the paint with one guy and see what he can do. And smart defenses are. I think that's why he struggles against the Celtics, or at least he struggled against the Celtics this time. He doesn't historically struggle against the Celtics. My point is that I think his his growth is going to come in forcing that help and in his shooting becoming more consistent. Bodies of work matter. And what I mean by that is if you shot 50% from three on a season and 41 games out of the season you went 5 for 5, and then the other 41 games of the season you went 0 for 5, the 0 for 5 would be more harmful than the 5 for 5 would be helpful. And the reason for that is because positive diminishing returns are stronger than negative diminishing returns. So yes, I think Quickley is going to end the season in the 37 to 40% from three range. I absolutely do think he's going to do that. But he needs to stop having really good game, really bad game from a shooting perspective. His shooting needs to become more consistent. He's too good a shooter to keep having this zigzag scatter chart as a shooter. And so I think that is the leap he can make. And I found it really interesting. For those who don't know, Dunks and Threes released their EPM rankings. And Quickley was, after a career year last season, Quickley was at exactly 0 so far this season. Despite what we're all watching on the tape, we all see that he's clearly improved as a basketball player. His impact has actually regressed so far this season. He's not helping the team as much this season as he did last season. And I think that first of all, a big part of that is he's negative defensively so far. And I haven't seen him be a negative. I think there's a lot of noise to that. But I do think that he's not the all-world defender we saw last season. But offensively, I think that he can still grow in the ways that I'm talking about. And I think that when he becomes less volatile and his output against the top-tier defenses gets more consistent, I think the Knicks offense will evolve in that way. So I actually think, to go all the way back to your original point, Quickley is kind of the poster for what you're talking about, for this volatility that is kind of bothering you.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I think as far as Quickley specifically, Quickley has been an extremely high variance shooter throughout his career. And I know one time, I think it was last season or something, he was going through one of his cold spells. And then I put together a chart of his shooting. I think it was like insanely consistently inconsistent. Like he had 3 games in a row where he'd shoot like 70% from 3, and then 3 games in a row where he'd shoot like 15% from 3. And it was like this, like a very consistent. Like I need to like find that tweet because I tweeted it out. It was like that for a very long stretch where he was like had 3 really good games shooting, 3 really bad games shooting, and it was like clockwork. So he's just oddly very streaky. And I think that consistency is a place where he needs to improve. I mean, I think that's something that we've seen. I think Buddy Hield was like this, before a few years ago. Like he was very inconsistent. He would run hot and cold from 3. Now I think he's a little bit more of a consistent shooter. I wish there was actually like a stat that we could pull up as far as like variance shooter. Which I think that it does make sense actually for that to exist. I don't think that's just like another stat to add to the pile. I think it actually tells you a lot. But yeah, I think the Quickley thing I agree with, but I would ask you, because I know we actually talked about this before we ever linked up and decided to do a podcast together or anything like that. Like I remember having this conversation through DMs. Quickley's on off has always been really, really good, and people might blame it on the fact that, or not blame it, attribute it to the fact that he comes off the bench and he rolls over bench units. He leads the second unit and rolls over bench teams because he's, to be honest, he's too good to be a bench player. But that makes his on off look really good, and it makes his, we'll talk about impact metrics in a little bit, but that makes his impact look not as good when you kind of account for strength of opponents and when you account for strength of teammates. I felt like this was not a concern for you as far as like Quickley's performance largely coming against bench units, and that's kind of like the impetus for why his on-offs look so good. We've seen him perform really, really, really well as a starter last year, of course. some of his best performances last year came as a starter against starting units.
I mean, he averaged 25 and 5 on 62% true shooting as a starter last season.
Right.
That's
And
with his defense, that's an all-star as
absolutely.
a 23-year-old.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And to be honest, I think even tonight, despite what you're saying, it is true. I think he like played relatively well tonight on offense. I think like you said, you also mentioned he had like 5 in and outs, which was like weird. Like you could almost just count those shots as makes because
but my point is XJ, just to hop in here real quick.
Yeah.
My point is that a lot of the shots that I agree with you. I would say he took 14 shots. At least 10 of them, you're just like, yes, we want you taking that every single time. And then a couple were just end of shot clock grenades that he got. But my point is that even the middle tier shots that he ended up taking were only taken after he snake dribbled around and no passes were available to him. And he's looking for the pass. The Knicks offense wants him to pass. Tibbs doesn't want you to turn it over. That's rule number 1. And he wants you to take shots at the rim, or he wants you to take threes. That's rule number 2. The person who's initiating the offense is creating the best shot possible. And when Quickley gets inside the arc, since he's not elite at getting to the rim like an RJ Barrett or he's very good in the mid-range, but he doesn't have the volume because he doesn't have the handles that Jalen Brunson does. So once Quickley gets inside the arc and he's not pulling up from 3, he's looking to pass. That's what he's looking to do in this offense. And in my opinion, the Timberwolves and other elite defenses are kind of they're becoming aware of that, and they're looking to take away the pass first. And I think that the reason Quickley had 0 assists tonight, one of the reasons is, yes, people missed shots off his passes, but another reason is because passes weren't available to him as often. So yes, I agree that within the paradigm of how he could play tonight, he played fine. And I don't hate any of the shots he took. I actually thought he played really good defense against Anthony Edwards, which is another reason that I was really surprised that Thibodeau didn't go with him at the end.
Yeah.
Because his defense on Edwards was awesome. And then Tibbs just went away from that really quick. He had a couple of possessions that were crazy. So yes, I just wanted to reiterate that I don't think he played a bad game at all. I think he played better than his shooting. I just think that it also exposed why his offensive impact is so volatile, because when the defense can take away his ability to pass and elevate his teammates, which is why he's so valuable. He is one of the ultimate teammate elevators, not just as a passer, but as a defender and as a mover, as a screener, as his gravity. His teammate elevation is the most valuable thing about him. And when on one side of the ball, the defense can take a huge part of that away from him, his impact becomes less pronounced.
Yeah, I think that's all right, and I largely agree. I think this is a primary reason why he's worked so hard in his mid-range shooting. And I don't think, what he was shooting earlier in the season from mid-range, which is like 60% or something like that. Obviously, I don't believe that's real, but I do think he is a legitimate 48% mid-range shooter and maybe even higher from short mid-range. So I do think that that's going to offset some of those deficiencies, because I think if you're able to score with that amount of consistency from, mid-range to short mid-range, I think teams will have to respect you a lot more, and bigs will have to come up, and those passing lanes will become more available to him. But I do just think if he makes 5 additional shots, last night, on against the Timberwolves, I think his game looks completely differently, and I would like to see him be aggressive and kind of look for those shots when the passes aren't readily available, and I think he's going to make them at a reliable clip later on. I just do want to see kind of his 3-point shooting come down from a variance standpoint and be a little bit more consistent moving forward. So that to me, that's the big step for Quickley. So, but I totally hear all of your points.
Yeah, I also just want to see him defending closer to last season. I do think he played another good defensive game, but just if you went back and watched the season on the whole so far this season, Jesus, of course it's this season. If you went back and watched the season on the whole, Um, he's getting beat off the bounce a little bit more than he did last season, and he hasn't been as perfectly in tune off the ball as he was last season. He's gotten beaten on a couple of backdoor cuts already this year, which is very, very rare for him. And yeah, I just don't think he's as locked in on that side of the ball, which is, again, this bar is very high, people. For if you're listening to this and you're not aware, Quickley was one of the most valuable guard defenders in all of basketball last season. So
And
I'm
like
not
we
holding
talked
him.
about, that didn't get him paid, right? So that I think that that's the concern for me anyway. Like he was that, like you said, and it didn't get him his contract. So it seems like he's making a more concerted effort to be an impact offensive player, is what it looks like to me.
Yeah, you said exactly that on the preseason pod. You were like, my concern is he didn't get paid being when all the impact stats loved him and they all loved his defense, and everyone already thinks he's Lou Williams 2.0. He like there's got to be some worry that he's just going to be like, okay, I'll just play like that, which would make him a less valuable basketball player.
And I think he's already getting reinforcement for that. Like we've seen his performance in in Washington, for instance, and kind of being the guy to do the post game interview. Obviously, a lot of that had to do with the fact that he was at home and had family there and stuff. But I just think we've seen him be already receive much more reinforcement for his offensive performances than he ever had for his subtle, nuanced defensive performances. And to me, if you align incentives that way, I don't know what else you would expect to get. So that's my concern.
It would just be a shame, and I would hope that somebody, whether it's in the Knicks, if the Knicks pay him, or if another team pays him, I would hope that there's somebody who reminds him, hey, you're a good offensive player, but you're a great defensive player. That's what you are, and you can go very far in this league being that. Don't lose that.
I I have the same hope, but maybe not the same optimism for for it. Yeah, I think for instance, a guy like Derek White gets his all of his accolades and flowers now, but I think Derek White has been playing in a similar style for a while before he was able to get like the reception for it. And even this year, I mean, Derek White's been a much better offensive player, I think, and his defense has been a little bit short of where it has been in past years. But